Hi, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be on the main stage at this fabulous festival, and thank you so much to Terry and to the entire team of hardworking organizers. It's been amazing. I have cried and laughed at the performances of the last couple of days, and I hope you're going to do the same for my work tonight. I have to tell you that I'm not known for my humor, so sorry about that. But I'm going to start with the book, Carolyn, which, if I tell you that it's written it's the history of Bonnie and Clyde, I think many people in the audience will immediately think of Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, and not the mess they made with the Academy Awards this year. But, you know, that film with the final scene that shocked all of us half to pieces, like what happened to them at the end of the film. And I wouldn't have gone back to be drawn to that entire story had I not read a biography which made it perfectly clear that that movie was almost entirely all lies, except for the brutal death that they suffered at the end. In fact, both Bonnie and Clyde in real life were physically handicapped and starved and lived in their car. So when I heard that, I thought, this is the story that I really want to unpack here. It's really a book about disenfranchised whites in America. That may sound like the people who, you know, voted in the current president. It is not. But I will start off with the history of Texas in the year in which they began their ride, Texas, 1930. Starved us off the fields and deafened us with the sawing of insects, the anger and the pungent need. The canyons, the Gulf Plains, the coast, the lowlands, the hill country, the basin, the range. What do they ask of us now that the soil offers nothing? Hear the thin, distant whisper of the tribes, the mound builders, Pueblo, Apache, Hassene, Comanche. The high singing of the Spaniards, the Mexicans, bleached bones along the Rio Grande, the dust of Sam Houston, the skull of Zachary Taylor, the fallen at the sieges, the dead and dying all across the plains. Wander the land at night and hear the screech owl lament, crying, our history, our sad, empty fields, how they speak this American shame, this endless churning landscape of our fathers who have lost most all they hold dear. Come to the cities in your wagons on foot with your mules, your women, your mangy, puling children. Cobble whatever shelter you may. Tell the old tales, mouth the history, taste the dust upon your tongue. Take flight from one border to another, just keep on in the thermal lift and yearn. There are markers of the rivers east and west, Pecos, Rio Grande, Brazos, Colorado, red, and still we thirst. And the black oil gushing out and out of the spindle tops, and the strangers who come to town, electric chairs in the back rooms, and men who throw the switch, and the prison farms with lean and beaten men running before the riders with their guns. The miles covered in cars going nowhere but away from here, then turning back and back again to the same old gutted roads with faces that stare at you like death is joyriding in the back seat. And the blacks all picked up and went somewhere else when the storms blew in. There was nothing left behind but the weevil and our gaunt faces peeping out at nothing. Now the women's work is over. They lie on pallets. The lack is another part of breathing, and the taste of charity in their mouths, and their breasts hanging like pockets of despair. And who remembers now the hurricanes in Indianola and Galveston, again in Galveston, and the many thousands who died there, clutching the Bible to their acquiescent hearts? We walk the streets line the curbs, forage in the news, lean bewildered against brick-warm walls, outrage pooling in our eyes. When will it come, justice and respect? When? Into the long white ribbon of road, the future careens away. So the Barrow family was a very close, tight-knit family, and this first poem is written from the point of view of Clyde Barrow's mother, Kumi Barrow. I had one steadfast wish: avoid the idle day. The devil plays upon a fallow soul. Also, be a helpmeet to my man, raise the children up right. Pray. Choose to live within the dust bowl, sleep beneath the wagon, haul cotton with ribboned hands. Not hard to sweep an earthen floor unless you press your will against the wind, grains speckling your eyes. Taught to read, but only in the Bible. I grew to read the gutters about my children, saw pictures there of widows they made who wore their bridal clothes to funerals. It is no lie there was drinking. There is only so much room for endless grief. Few regrets. I'd look forward to the picnics, red beans and rice, fried chicken in the hand, shrill cicadas and evening light. Listen, why is my youngest out on the road past midnight? Patience wears thin as skin, gunfire all over this land. A human husk I was, yet fierce till the expected came. Forgiveness, if I did not bend, purchased one grave for two loved sons. So they had a pretty desperate time of it all. And one night, Clyde Barrow met Bonnie Parker. Clyde at Buster's party. Clarence brought me. And I was looking round when she walked in. The air itself just turned to something new. Blonde hair flying, firecracker eyes exploring everything. And when she seen me, her face, it just blossomed with clear intentions. I couldn't let the chance pass. Stretched out my hand, stood close, brought her next the window so I could show her which was my fancy ride. Talk going on around us, her blue eyes steady, hair full of light streaming in from the porch. After I kissed her, she gave a little smile and crashed near flat agin me when I held her. She, no taller than a pony, thought I could have picked her up and run. Heard she had a husband in the joint. She said it weren't real. She was quick as a hiccup, bored in school, what to do in a hole like Cement City when you're hurting for more and nothing ever happens. Never saw another want the same so fierce, to drive and be alive the way we could if we had chances and the world ran right. And Clyde was a tremendous driver. And he also stole the fastest cars on the road, so he was way faster than the cops. But when he thought he was being chased, he would drive for thousands of miles at a stretch and only stop to fill up with gas or, steal gas and change the tires on the car. And Bonnie would be sitting in the back seat with a Remington typewriter typing her poems. This is a poem from her voice, Long Distance Drive. Clyde knew all the routes from Texas up to Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, and back on and on into the cloak of night. Evening lights rushing past, meager dwellings in the fields, a woman standing at the window or in the golden distance, a child or someone small. Some nights I'd waken, not remember where we'd been or where we were headed. I'd say, "Sugar, where do you think we are?" He always knew which way to go, how fast to drive to get there. Sleepless, I get going on polishing and loading the guns, sometimes in my head, thinking up a rhyme or two. Maybe I'd say them. I'd be pleased to do the watching when it was Clyde's turn to sleep, listen to the night and thinking on our lives, just looking for the sun to rise. So most of this book is true, or sort of true, from judging from this biography that I trusted. But there's one poem that I made up because I knew that at one point they had driven up around the Great Lakes, and I knew if they were anywhere near Chicago, and apparently they went right around Chicago, if they were anywhere near Chicago at about that time, there was the World's Fair on, and I knew Bonnie Parker wouldn't go past Chicago and not go to the World's Fair. So this is my idea of their holiday at the World's Fair. It's called Barrel Fires. It's from Clyde's point of view. The flames reflect faces on our drive, seeing two good lookers on a holiday. Rode up to Bay City along the lakes all over Chicago. Why the hell not? We're young. Got a pass to see the World's Fair. Girls wrapped up in ice cubes, midgets, General Balbo and his 24 seaplanes all the way from Rome, fan dancers, sky ride. We ate, lying on a beach most all the time. Motor courts, long and dreamless sleeps. We did not listen to the news or much outside. We laughed like hell. I sang some. Bonnie rhymed. I grieve that my old ma and pa have never felt as free. So, as I said, he stole the fastest cars on the road, and at about that time, Henry Ford developed a revolutionary car, which was the flat-top V8 Ford, and it was extremely fast. And this is a letter, this is a historical document that Clyde wrote to Henry Ford. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 10th of April. Mr. Henry Ford, Detroit, Michigan. Dear Sir, while I still have got breath in my lungs, I will tell you what a dandy car you make. I have drove Fords exclusively when I could get away with one. For sustained speed and freedom from trouble, the Ford has got every other car skinned. And even if my business hasn't been strictly legal, it don't hurt anything to tell you what a fine car you got in the V8. Yours truly, Clyde Champion Barrow. So Henry Ford had that on his wall for many years. The only mistake Clyde made was he flipped the car one night trying to get away from the cops, and Bonnie was crushed underneath the battery. The dripping battery acid burned her from her knee to her ankle to the bone. And for the last 6 months of her life, he carried her in his arms. This is her poem, Proud Flesh. It was not bullets flying around the risks we took that carved my deepest scar. It was the driving. One mad night when Clyde flipped off the road and all was sudden mayhem, overturned disaster, knee to ankle burned into a flesh-made trench. I do not now recall much of those early hours. To wake and feel myself pried from the car onto the legs of strangers, then into dark again, and driving through the night, some woods deep hidden room, lifted into bed, from there to toilet when I needed it, me screaming, drinking brew. They poured all that they had into my care and brought my sister there for aid and comfort. Sobbed tears, prayed hard, pain greater than I could ever reckon. I don't recall much till my leg drew up beneath me, and the evenings, mornings, afternoons, all one long hurt and drink, like armor on the outside of an open wound, raised up and thick, a binding that held us fast. It was one thing Clyde did wrong, that wretched, rushing night, and crashed there at the bridge. But when alone, our wounds displayed one to the other, it was a pledge of all we were, which would not break nor bend. Along for the ride for 3 months were Clyde's beloved older brother, Buck, who was known to the cops at one point as Icy Barrel. And he really was a cold-hearted killer. And the woman who adored him, his wife, Blanche, his third wife, who would have gone anywhere and done anything that Buck asked. And she got into the car as an innocent and rode along with them for 3 months, lost 25 pounds, and watched her husband shot to death brutally one night. And this is her poem, Blanche Remembers the Long Ride. I used to believe in love the way believers play their faith, close to the chest, fanning it out when they need it most. I could have used some back there when my mother sold me for a song. A hard-handed man, he broke me surely, no more hopes for children or a tender word at best. My daddy was a kind man, but so poor he couldn't cope with anything but slow tilling of the dry soil, sun up, sun down, wind that brought the farm indoors. The only thing saved him was his death-like sleep. Yet dreams go on. Never expected to find what love was really like, how it pulled me to Buck like a chigger to the hairline, his warm brown eyes, his hands that mastered anything he put his mind to. We had such plans for living, he and I, in some woodland, bright, safe place, far away from all we'd known before. We would be fine and free. We said so. All the nights in tourist camps, lying awake, listening to passing cars. Then the storm of bullets and blood that burst in streams on the floor out of the dead upon their backs. Who could ever have reckoned how bad it would become? The nights I'd sit up on the car and watch the stars, taste of terror in my throat and gore on my thin hands. Some nights I couldn't see the moon for all the horror in the way. Or maybe it was hunger, or the endless sleepless days when all we had was fame, not the kind I ever wanted, outlaw woman. They didn't even know my real name. I would have gone most anywhere with Buck, but they would not let me be there at the end, both of us broken, no use anymore. When we first met on that road in sad West Dallas, he was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen, and he loved me so. Even my daddy liked him. He was good all the way down to the bone. Went to serve out his whole term because I asked. I wish he'd stayed there now, or maybe gone to school, or left his kin behind. It was all on goddamn Clyde what happened. We were doomed. I knew it from the start. There was so much to hope for in those dusty early days, his arms around me, all the future still to come. So she was the survivor of this gang. She did her time. She got out, she remarried, and had a life. And the last poem I'm going to read from this collection is from Bonnie's point of view, but it's also kind of from mine because I really love to drive, and I really love to drive way too fast. And I was also taken around in 2 cars. One was a Ford flat-top V8, which is kept in amazing, pristine condition and used for film. So the guy that owned that took me for a ride in the car with him. It was fabulous. And Dan Aykroyd took me for a ride in his car, which is the kind of car that J. Edgar Hoover would have ridden in when he was planning to catch Bonnie and Clyde. So this poem is also kind of from my point of view, but it's kind of from Bonnie's, and it's called I Love the Car. Because within its scope, there is both gratitude and anguish. It has saved my life and stolen my ability to run. It has let us ride together, knee to knee, and thighs pressed close beneath the pig blood dash, world flying by, and we could let it go. Because deep within the soft back seat, the revolver smiles and winks. Ammunition calls out to be housed, rifles lurk. Forget about the typewriter, all its keys and promise. There is no end to work that can be done. Because we rolled along with 8 after the Eastham break, and we were soaring then. The car could have run on nerves and fear alone. 4 thin tires bouncing on the rutted earth. Yet freedom is what we knew that day. All Clyde had promised. and he never broke his word. Because it took us on a holiday or two, cruised us past some likely marks, left every other damn car choking in its dust, offered up a welcome bed where drunk or sober bones could rest, a carpet floor both merciful and thirsty, a space where we felt safe enough to sleep. It made us look like winners in this life. I'm going to read, this is a collection of 7 dramatic monologues, or persona poems, as they're called in America. And I'm going to read the last poem of the collection, which is the only Canadian in the book. When I was a little girl, I grew up, my parents rented a cottage on Kingsmere Lake outside of Ottawa in the Gatineau Hills. And there was a wooden sign on the driveway that said "Smart." And I thought, how nice of the neighbors to put this sign up for the renters. But many years later, I read Rosemary Sullivan's biography of Elizabeth Smart and saw the pictures of her house at Kingsmere. And that was her house. Elizabeth Smart is known for, well, many people consider her novella by Grand Central Station, I Sat Down and Wept, the finest novella in the English language. Not only did we we live in the same house, but we also went to the same school and have the same last name. So, you know, I had to write this poem. It's called Ardent. Elizabeth Smart, December 27th, 1913 to March the 4th, 1986. Life is murder, and art is even worse. Do I dare to plunge into this journey? Put on the clarinet quintet in A, let Mozart help me through. I find as many answers there as anywhere. A happy little pill unwinds me. What I remember best is Kingsmere, my truest paradise. I recognize each rock and root, the path unwinding to the boathouse, the leap of leopard frogs against the still midday, the dark, cool water of the lake. Storms roil beyond the waving mapled hills and up through pines to where I crouch the creaking lovely floor to clip my fashioned paper dolls and memorize the genus of each blessed simple thing. Implicit ferns unfolding in the shade, mouths of giant pike, their googly eyes, the mountain, its mantle-sweetened air. Nighttime, the humped raccoons beyond the walls creep past my torpid bedstead. The empty, sighing lounge chairs, stains of misplaced highballs, feather ticking, dawn. In the fall, back to Ottawa for the Smarts. The chill air on Beechwood, green, stiff skirts of uniforms, my sisters and I walking through the darkened Elmwood doors. Good girls, all of us. I love to see the youngest ones at play in the wooden toy house near Springfield, the door so small you'd wonder how a baby could pass through. Perfect housewives practicing. The sound of Mummy's wails at night in winter, the sight of her adrift in snow, or pacing on the balcony, or rolling round the bathroom floor, my sister Helen's dress torn off, her tender breasts exposed, face slapped, and baby Russell crying, a small body sobbing in a bed of maple leaves. Daddy read his lawyer's letters and laid truth down like matting. This is how we lived, and we were lonely. My God, the hell of Ottawa. There's never been a place so dismal. Bloody invitations to the après-ski, an afternoon of skating up at Rideau Hall, the little theatre evenings. Then London, where Jane and I were sovereigns. I'd forage every alley for something crammed with meaning, anything relentless, captivating, whole. I knew one day I'd find it, knew it in my bones, my sex. We lived the life that Mummy never did, and when she came to town, her balm would sweep us in, her lovely smell, her underwear, her shopping sprees. She was warm, extravagant, delicious, and then she'd turn to me and say, "I've hated you all day. You're the meanest little thing. Any child could write this drivel. I must marry a poet. It's the only thing." All these summers, Kingsmere, a private, lovely life with leaves and earth, wild geese and Dutchman's breeches, hepaticas and bloodroot, bird song, the smell of mornings after rain. Pleasing mother, being self, my body but a seam that rips from end to end. Huge diversions of the upper class, dress-up parties at the King Estate, dancing on our screen verandas. My journals overflow with incantation, bucking back the emptiness with language. One day, in better books in Charing Cross, I found the poems of a man named Barker and told the world that I would marry him. This is what I want: art, love, and children. Do not stoop to offer less than everything. Waiting for the bus in Monterey, I changed my lipstick often and considered what the future held. His wife climbed down, so thin and shy, so dark against my shining head. I must be radiant, aglow on fire. We drive to where we live nearby in huts. George Barker's hand on mine, his arm against my nipple, the whole world rocking. I try so hard to be polite until he comes upon me in the water. And now I love the night, the legs of children, tall poinsettia, hydrangeas and the lemon trees. I love the residential palms that dress in pantaloons. I love the birds and pepper trees, the sun on swimming pools, the multitude of kisses, never enough skin to sate me. It is no surprise I am arrested at the Arizona border because he is my love and I am his. Who cares for his English class awareness, prissy wife? Can there be life or breath apart from this? In the mornings, I am ill with child at Pender Harbor. I write my book, Desire Made Flesh and Rhetoric. By Grand Central Station, I sat down and wept, was birthed 2 weeks before Georgina. I do not mind my child a bastard. It will help them to avoid the bores, the snobs, the petty, the afraid. I had 4 in total, my darlings, all my dreams. We lived with nothing, yet I smocked their clothes, made nettle soup, held honeyed bodies in my arms, bleached nappies in the dark, wiped noses, rode them here and there upon my bike, smoked and drank and wept. And George would come and leave his seed behind, but never any cash or caring, just an Ottawa allowance. And I lived so far away, in farms in England or wherever costs were few, a low, wet cottage in the Irish hills, bed-sits in London, barnyards, attics. Oh, beloved friends, oh, stagger me with cases, bottles clunking well into the weekend drunk. George, I beg you, I am so afraid of wind, the empty house, the air raids, burglars, lunatics and ghouls, catastrophe, appearances, and death. You must do something, for I'm simply going mad. You are my husband and my one true love, no matter how many other wives post you their midnight dreams. Georgina, Christopher, Sebastian, and then Rose. The womb's an unwieldy baggage. Who can stagger uphill with such a noisy weight? To send the children to good schools with clean and decent clothing, lots of books. I worked Queen, worked Vogue. I was the best copywriter in the city. Sat at desk, sniffed glue, held phone, typed hard, took drink, wrote fast and funny, hard and real, scurried through the filthy streets, harassed by deadlines, took pills, the crystal clear dependency, bloody sharp, that focus, I ground my teeth. Put my feet up on the weekends, wellies on the workbench, dead soldiers piling up below. What is left of my youth rushes up like a geyser as I sit in the sun, combing lice from my hair. How to survive life's script. You pray and bang your head. Be beautiful, wait, love, rage, rail, look, and possibly, if lucky, see. Love again. Try to stop loving, go on loving, bustle about, rush to and fro. Whatever you say will be far less than truth. I saw my children off to life and turned alone back down the bitter lane. BBC sonatas in the kitchen, empty page. I am desperate from hating, pushed too far to do too much. But then the strangest thing, my little book revived and I am famous. The heady stuff of praise and recognition sets me restless and all a tremble. There is money, and I fix a place to live and work a garden there. Crawl on my hands and knees upstairs to bed. Why not? Tricks, sleight of hand, anything it takes. And in the mornings I rise and toil amidst the pits and rumblings of the earth. How dear it is to birth a flower, hold a cutting, name a thing, and they wind quite round about me, like my children always did. I begin a poem here and there, small things, a flutter more than most. Then Rose takes up the needle, so I hold her children too. Death by misadventure, so they said. We buried Rose. When one's own heart child goes to death, what's left? Nothing wards, no language. Why did I not tell her what I knew? The long bitterness of life, the mean, the ungenerous, the need to forge capacities for pain. George has many children. What's one less? The one he laid his hands on, seldom. Gone for good. Life is the roll of matter heaving into heaven in its painful individual way. They asked me back to Canada to talk about the craft. I drank away the bleak lot where I lived. Friends turned their heads in fear and bald disgust. The late-night coffee shops and men, the vomit on the rugs. Then home at last. Clematis everywhere and rain. Worm was my best beast friend. Mud was my first love. I adore this twisted acre and lie in bed remembering, calling out in sleep for Mummy. What these nightmares bring me to, I dread. When these pills kick in, I open up my head to memory and fear, whole notebooks filling late at night, with writing near impossible to read. But it is there. You find it if you can. Make from it all whatever books you wish. Thank you.